Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for having me. I don't normally talk about 7 companies. Is this on? There we go. I don't normally talk about 7 companies because only about 2 of them are worthy of talking about, and the other 5, well, they've come and gone. And that actually ties into the theme of what I'm going to talk about today, but I can tell you a little bit about myself first. I'm a founder of Opinions.com, which went public as part of Shopping.com. A founder of Vast.com, which is a big classified white label search engine. Powers Kelley Blue Book, USAA, VHIX, AutoBytel, Auto Media, Auto Extra, and a couple of other big sites. I have a small angel investment fund, invested in about 50 companies, including Twitter, Discus, Stack Overflow, social media, SnapLogic. And most recently, I'm a co-author of a blog called Venture Hacks, which is now the second largest VC and venture-related blog on the web. And we recently launched a product called AngelList, which connects angels and startups. And in about the 3 months since launch, we've had over 1,000 startups apply for financing. We've introduced them to over 200 angels, and we've had over a dozen companies funded. So kind of a virtual way for startups and angels to get together. Honored to be here today. Obviously, this conference is all about the launch. It's about the beginnings. That's a great Silicon Valley mythology. It's all about dorm rooms and trailers and maxed out credit cards. And we all know the stories of Larry and Sergey and Jerry and Philo and so on starting their companies. So the launch is a beautiful thing. And for those of you who are reading the blogosphere recently, there's this concept that has emerged. And it's not a brand new concept, but they've put new words to it. And it's called a pivot. And Eric Ries has famously defined the pivot as the idea that successful startups change directions, but they stay grounded in what they've learned. And they keep one foot in the past, and they place one foot in a new possible future. And I want to talk about something related, but that's very important to me. And that's something that probably everyone in this room has been through at one point or another, and I call that the restart. And it's not just about business. It's in all aspects of life. So earlier when I mentioned 7 companies down to 2, there's a lot of complete restarts in there. And I want to talk about what I've learned about the restart and how it's different from the pivot and how it's different from the start, and why it's important to be intellectually honest in your restarts, and why they're probably the single most important thing you'll do. The problem with restarts is that nobody wants to do them. You feel like you've spent your entire life building something up. Why would you want to restart now? So generally, they only come when you've been crushed down, when you're forced to, when there's some pain and some loss involved. But I would argue that every successful entrepreneur, and certainly every successful serial entrepreneur, has completely reinvented themselves at some point. My brother, who has a flair for the dramatic, calls it the Phoenix Principle. So I'm going to stay with that term. And the idea is that if you want to be successful, and certainly serially successful in your life, any time that you face great pain or great trauma, you should use that as an opportunity to rebuild yourself. You have to create a new future from scratch. And maybe the only thing you carry through are a few essential relationships and a few essential learnings. But the more you can leave behind and the fresher your start can be, the better off you're going to do for yourself. Now, in my life, I've decided over time to focus down on 3 things that really matter to me. One is my health, the other is my business and my wealth, and the third are the relationships with the people that matter to me. And I'm sure you each have your own variation of your own priorities, but those 3 matter a great deal to me. So I'm going to talk about restarts in all 3 of those, just to keep it interesting and not to keep it entirely about business this morning. So let's talk about health. I'm a big believer that everyone can have a great health if they watch their diet and their exercise and so forth. But what does that mean? If I were to survey 10 people in here about what a good diet is, I would get 10 different answers, and I would get every belief under the sun. There's some people here are low carb, some people will be low fat, some people will be pro-fish, some people will be anti-mercury. Some will be counting calories, some will be counting blocks in the zone. And so there is a system there, a belief, a faith that we get locked into over time. And I think it's very important to realize that if it's working for you, great. But if it's not working for you, and it's easy to tell, you can get on the scale or go see your doctor and get measured. It's important to do a restart. And in my life, getting a little personal, but in my health, I did a restart, which is I was not doing well, and I was a lifelong vegetarian, and I had to become essentially a carnivore. And it was a series of experimentations, and over 5 years, I had to retrain myself to go from a no-meat diet to an all-meat diet. And it worked out pretty well. But it was very, very difficult, and it meant leaving behind all the old patterns and all the old behaviors. And that only came when I felt my health was deteriorating. So for those of you if you're out there, you're wondering about it, I would encourage you to self-experiment and try something brand new. But it's important not to just make tweaks around the edges and not to get locked in the faith or the religion or the dogma that you may have built up over the years. I'm going to get off the personal for a moment.